There's not much separating you now from the other people. Class rank is going out the window. Grades are going out the window. Step one is pass fail now. What do you
Hmm.
have to distinguish yourself? And so the weight of somebody else's words weighs so much heavier now more than ever.
Welcome to the Physician Pharmacist podcast, a show designed to shed some light on a very unusual pathway into medicine. I'm your host, Nathan Gartland, and I'm a licensed pharmacist and fourth-year medical student. I'm also the author of PharmD to MD and the owner of the Physician Pharmacist Company. As this podcast has grown, we've had the tremendous opportunity to broaden our scope and explore other non-traditional healthcare careers. Tune in to hear from our non-traditional experts serving at the frontier of medicine, technology, and innovation. Today, I'm happy to have a very special interview with Andy Nguyen, who some of you might recognize as the famous ND MD. Andy is a current fourth-year medical student at the Medical College of Georgia and is an Augusta, Georgia native. He has since dedicated his personal time to document his medical education journey and share his experiences with the community. As the founder of NDMD Productions, he has amassed a considerable following with over 159,000 YouTube subscribers. Today, you will have the opportunity to learn about the behind-the-scenes life of a medical student content creator and hear his reflections on what it's like to finally be a fourth-year medical student. Alrighty, Andy, welcome to the podcast today.
Hey, thank you for having me. This is kind of a full circle moment because, about a year or so ago, you were on my podcast, Beyond the Scope, and I'm really grateful that you've kept in touch and kept spamming my email amongst my irresponsibly late responses. But so grateful to join you on yours this time, and at a much more reflective period in both of our lives.
Absolutely. And shout out to season 2, episode 4 of Beyond the Scope podcast right there. I did my research.
Dude, that's awesome. By the way, just a quick shout out to anybody that has listened to that podcast. Um, I run through a podcast company, so I don't get to check the analytics very often, at least on the streaming services end. And maybe I think you'd be surprised to know that episode has over 10,000 downloads across streaming services, by the way. So your story has been just incredible to all those kind of going down a similar route or maybe interested in a route that you took to becoming a physician. And I'm just grateful to have brought you on my podcast and super excited for our conversation and yours.
Yeah, thank you so much. I mean, I didn't know that. That's definitely a lot to reflect on there too. But obviously having you here too is an honor because hundreds of thousands of people look up to you and listen to your recommendations. Like, I think they do that because you're one of the most authentic medical YouTubers out there. And I'm super excited to kind of hear about your journey today and honestly just decompress, like you were saying, after we've had a very grueling past couple months leading up to the end of medical school. So first off, can you tell us a little bit about where you're from and what your life was like before going to medical school?
I am an Augusta native, so I've spent basically my entire life in Augusta, Georgia. Grew up here, born and raised. If you have no idea where that is, if you're a golf fan, look up the Masters. It is the only week in the entire year where quite literally everybody in the world wants to be in this crazy city in Georgia. But I grew up here, literally was born like 2 minutes away from where I go to medical school as well as where I currently live. And I was part of a 7-year BSMD accelerated medical track. So I was conditionally accepted into medical school out of high school. And that was quite the interesting decision for a 17-year-old Andy to make. To sign a contract that committed the next 7 years in his hometown. 17-year-old Andy wasn't exactly excited about that. But, being at the end of that journey, I'm so grateful for that decision, for both professional and personal reasons, honestly. But yeah, I did my 3 years of undergrad at little developing Augusta University as part of that contract, and I'm finishing up my fourth year at the Medical College of Georgia, all in Augusta. So it's been a joy to um, have the context of both the culture and the community in this city throughout both undergrad and medical school, but also just like it's almost a decade. I've gotten to watch this school, both as an undergraduate institution as well as a medical school, just grow immensely along with myself. And it's been such a joy to be a part of. But I think everybody would be agreed with me in saying that I need a change of environment at this point in my life. So I'm very much looking forward to finding a new home somewhere in residency in just a couple weeks as of recording of this episode.
Absolutely. And I think that's incredible that you knew from the start that you wanted to be a physician. Is that like kind of how it came together? Were there outside influences that kind of led you to down the path of medicine? And it's so cool that they had this program available to you.
I think it's a little bit of God-given luck, to be honest. That I was one lucky that this program even existed. I was the fourth full cohort to go through. So when I applied, it was brand spanking new. There is a lot of development that I've taken part in this program. I still have a great relationship with my program managers, and it was scary in a predictable fashion. As in, like, I kind of knew what I was signing myself up for, but because I knew it was in my own backyard, it didn't feel as intimidating as probably like if you were from Atlanta or like Valdosta to move to Augusta and be like, ooh, I gotta try this out. So it wasn't terrible. And kind of in that run, um, the God-given luck part of it was I was exploring a lot of career options in high school, and I was fortunate enough to get into a research program between my junior and senior year of high school. And because I lived in Augusta, it was affiliated with a lab in at the medical college here. And
Hmm.
it ended up being um, a clinical lab, meaning that we saw patients, and it was regarding exercise physiology with sickle cell patients as well as cystic fibrosis patients, working on a lot of like metabolism studies. And that was the first time I was in a clinical environment, got to sit down, and they don't know if you're a medical student or a high school student. They just look at you like, okay, cool. I'm coming up because I signed up for these trials in hopes that, this medication or study can give me the chance at a better life. And, hearing patients longitudinally over this summer tell me their stories of their disease, how it's affected their life, and how they came to this trial was my first interaction of like, oh wow, this is a very intimate field that I guess I have an aura that people feel comfortable telling me these things. Uh, but I think on top of that, I had incredible mentors. This program, which has since been discontinued, unfortunately, was run by, now looking back on it, the Department of like Medical Education, and it was arranged by transitioning M1 to MS2 medical students at the Medical College of Georgia. So the head of it was an MS1 going to MS2, and while I was in the lab, I was also working with two medical students, and like I just hung out with them all day long. And like they were just the coolest people in the world. Two two of which went into emergency medicine, and one of which I literally texted a couple months ago about his recommendations of his anesthesia residency program. Because that was the relationship and friendship that we fostered during that time, and it was just such an incredible period of mentorship. And they showed me what it was like to be a medical student. I saw myself in their shoes one day, and that's how things kind of transition to maybe I should take the risk and apply to one of these programs. And that's kind of all she wrote.
Wow. So you definitely have like a foundation in medicine. You have a lot of like compelling reasons as to why you wanted to explore this field. So I'm curious to know too a little bit about why you decided to document this journey as a whole. I'm taking it that you have skills with like videography and photography.
It was a hobby and a skill set that I kind of built up on my own over the years. I started doing photography when I was like 15. And then I was like student body president, student section leader in high school, all the stuff that like doesn't matter at all. um, but like part of why I started picking up photography was to kind of like build up hype for our student events and like the football games and everything like that. And I started doing like sports and event photography to showcase all that emotion and everything. It was an art form that I realized was able to capture so much story, so much of life, and so much memory in an instant. And I absolutely fell in love with it. My first camera was a Canon Rebel T1i. Thing didn't even have autofocus. So with that, it was a great way to learn camera basics because I had to like manually focus everything, but it was such a cool thing. And I continued to do freelance work all throughout undergrad, got some formal training throughout my time in undergrad doing official stuff for my campus ministry as well. I was like the media director for local Red Cross and everything. I was doing all their stuff. And it developed into an expertise specifically portrait and event photography, but also expanded it to videography and interview videography, event videography, all things that kind of like capture in the moment stories. And over time, again, I've never had any like formal lessons. I've been on like formal sets and everything, and managing huge projects, but like I never went to school for this. It's just something that I love to do and an art form that I saw a lot of worth in. And I think everybody kind of has their COVID project, especially you and I, since we started medical school at the same time. We both know our first year of medical school was kind of shrouded in that whole thing. Like none of us could see, like, we didn't have any of the socials, we didn't have any of the class events. We couldn't even shadow
Hmm.
in the hospital. And for me, video was like the one way that I was able to connect our class and connect myself with other people and other people with other people. And that was something that meant a lot to me. It ended up getting me on our class exec board as a historian to continue to document those moments for my class. And so as time kind of went on, yeah, I did like the random vlog type stuff, which like I hate myself looking back on those videos because they're not great at all. But if you don't look back and cringe at your first videos, that means you haven't improved. So I'll take that as a self compliment if I'm like face palming every time I watch my old videos. But yeah, the big thing for me was being able to share stories safely at that time, and that's kind of where the 73 question series was born from. Because I don't think I could shadow until like after my first year of med school, which is exceedingly late for
Hmm.
anybody. And like the fact that we were supposed to make a career decision on specialty off of like no experience is just ridiculous. So, this series is a way for not just other people to explore the different specialties, but for me to also explore these different specialties. Um, and I think it allowed me to get a much deeper sense of what was I think is important to me, which is personality lineup,
Hmm.
as well as lifestyle lineup. And I get people all the time that are like, why don't you ask them about salary? Why don't you ask them about that? I'm like, you can look that up. But to me, that I value like, what does that life look like in the shoes of this physician? And not just that, but I want to know like what that person is just like, period. Do I see myself not just in their shoes, but getting along with many people that look and act like them? Because if you're going to go into a field, you're going to interact with a lot of characters that kind of like self select into this group, into a specialty. And if you don't vibe with them, you're not going to have a great time. And there'll always be one or two rotten eggs, but as a majority, you have to mesh well with this field. And that's why I adopted kind of a very organic, very home comfortable interview style, because that is what allows these physicians who are so used to having the professional stiff collar tie on look to lower those walls and talk to you as if you're a guest in their home, not as if you are a pre-med gunning for blank pediatric neurologic surgery of the left kidney, you know? And that's kind of where everything started. Of course, the skill expertise was there in the beginning, which is why I was able to kind of do all that video work along with all the medical school work, because my workflow was already established. It's the hardest part of, starting any of this stuff, especially in a stage like medical school. Everyone's like, oh, how can I do this? I'm like, do you know how to edit and everything? Either that, or do you have the capital to hire yourself an editor? Because that's the biggest time constraint out there, and it takes a lot of mental fortitude to always be planning these videos. Each of the videos that I made were like vlogs were a couple weeks in the planning. Some of these interviews were literally like 6+ months of communication in advance. So that's all back end stuff that got to be able to handle, along with learning the Krebs cycle for the 15th time.
Yeah, you will never learn the Krebs cycle. That's like a guarantee.
Yeah.
I've
The
learned
true
a
Krebs
million
cycle
times
is
this one.
learn and forget, learn and forget.
Yeah. Wow. I mean, I think that's really cool that you were able to turn like this obvious tragedy into like a huge opportunity for self-improvement, and you kind of like took that value that you found was missing in your experience and tried to improve that and share it with the rest of the world. And I think that's so cool. And so I think just very like noble that you would like kind of invest that much time into sharing this experience. So, and you, like you mentioned too, like you start out very slow, very like you learn one new thing. I think the famous book's like Atomic Habits, where if you get 1% better at your particular video editing skills or whatever that may be, scripting and whatnot, you will exponentially improve over time. So I think that's just really, really cool and insightful.
Oh, thank you. And I don't think I ever started with the intent of like nobility or anything. I found value in the stories that I was able to capture. And I mean, YouTube is a wonderful platform. Of course, it's the one that I love and main. I'm not sponsored by YouTube to say that, unless it's one of those things where I wanted a safe way to explore myself, and if I can share those stories with other people, then like why withhold that? Using the skill that I have, I never intended it for it to completely blow up and turn into this thing, but it was fun for me. It was a way to use the skill set that I had, keep it warm and not let it die out, but also merge the two passions of my life, which I think something I've tried and attempted to do for the past like 4-ish years, and I'm still trying every day to figure out a better way to do it.
And so let's talk a little bit about medical school now. And reflecting back, I think it's very surreal to know that both of us are about to graduate in just a mere couple months, especially when at times it certainly seemed like we'd never make it at all. How do you feel about finally getting to the end of this long road?
Man,
Deep breath.
yeah, it's like sigh in the transcription. It's just deep sigh in italics, because I think there's not many words to describe it, and I think everybody arrives at the emotion differently. I will say that, like my emotions come from a context of a 7-year package, basically.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, I have this unique thing where I'm analyzing and digesting this experience as a near decade experience, not just a 4-year. So a lot weighs on me heavier than I think it would a lot of people, and probably a lot more dramatic than a lot of people would reckon 4 years can hit you. If I could just like summarize it in a couple words, I think it's one of those things where you get to the top of the mountain and you look back and you will see some parts of your journey where you created scorched earth for yourself. but then that you will see some parts of your journey where now looking back on it, there's flowers blooming and fruit growing from those moments. You're going to have both of those. That's something that I really do look back on and see, because a lot of the lessons that I'm taking away from this medical school experience based off of kind of the extremes of physical, mental, and emotional strain that this experience puts on you, it has, it's made me a better man in general. Um, but I think in a growing pain way. And I'm grateful for those moments just as much as I'm grateful for the fun, joyful, like jump up and down, yes moments that, you know, included hopefully in, you know, a couple weeks is match day and everything. But it does feel bittersweet to me because, you know, everybody tells you that you sacrifice a lot for this profession and this education, and there is a lot of parts of this education that will not be taught in textbooks. You just gotta experience it. We all say that for a reason because it happens, and that's kind of been this bizarre reflection period for me. Is I'm I'm sorting through my archives, my mental SSDs, and going which fall into the folder of like, dang, that was rough. Where can you have pulled things from there? And you know what? A lot of these moments that you didn't celebrate, now is the time to really like take that, enjoy it, because you're near the end of this road.
Yeah, I think that's really cool that you're like taking the time to kind of reflect on all of this. And also, like, kind of building off of what you were just saying, one of your recent videos, and it was quote unquote reflecting on my medical school rotations. I think you provide your audience with a really like holistic and like deep perspective about how you are quote unquote rebuilding yourself and your channel. So, like, can you expand on like what you mean by that?
A lot I'm gonna have to save for probably another video that I totally plan on making soon. But I think this channel has changed, and me as a creator has changed over the past couple years. I'm watching a lot of the friends that I've made on this journey also grow and mature, both as a physician and a person. And I'm trying to like pull little lessons from their experiences and bring them into my life. Whether that be like Dr. Tellini, who is like one of my first YouTube interactions. You know, he's now a father, businessman. He's taking time off social media because like that's what matters to him right now. He's working wonderful private practice, interventional radiologist. And he's providing for his family because that's his priority. I'm seeing like one of my great friends, Rachel Southard, you know, transition her social media and talk about her experience as a resident physician, but also seeing how being an intern has changed not just her content, but the way she takes care of herself off camera. Those are all things that, like, because I have this unique perspective of being fairly close with some of these people, I have to do a little bit of soul searching off camera and figure out like how is this going to fit in to my life as a resident, and do I want it to fit in with my life as a resident, and like where are my priorities now? I think this will be a lot of personal yapping per se on this podcast, but a new chapter is turning for me. Like I mentioned, I've never lived outside of Augusta, Georgia, so am ready to embrace that challenge of living somewhere else and kind of developing a more quote unquote traditional adult life, even though, you know, I'm still like 24. It's going to be a change, and there will almost be a lot of growing up that I'm trying to decide, do I want to do off camera or on camera? All that on top of, let me be the best doctor I can be in residency. I'm not going to take the camera everywhere like I used to do in med school. Just not. And then again, there are little things in the personal life that I think I realize how much medicine has taken away from me. That's something I kind of realized when I switch from orthopedic surgery to anesthesia.
Hmm.
That's not 100% the reason. That's not even a majority of the reason, but it was a greater than 0% because I saw what the pursuit of that was doing to my life, how it was affecting the people around me, how it was affecting me. And those are things that, using my proverbial example earlier, that's some of the scorched earth that I'm seeing now that
Hmm.
I'm kind of at the top of the mountain. And those are things that I kind of alluded to in that video when I'm saying like this is a rebuilding period for me where I can either take all those lessons learned throughout medical school and brush them aside and just act like all of that is okay, even the bad things, and let it grow in another place. And oh, whatever that may look like, I don't know. I'm excited to know, but it's hard to plan videos around something that you don't.
Yeah, I totally get that as well. Like, I think there's like I don't know, insidious is too heavy of a word, but I would say like just like some kind of downsides to like the medical training. Like, there's always this behind the scenes like tug of war that you're playing, where like you have these hobbies, these interests, these different things that kind of like bring a lot of meaning to your life, and those are in direct conflict sometimes with like your medical school responsibilities or the kind of resident that you are training to become. And I think like there's
Mhm.
this like very delicate balance that you have to play where you want to shift the scale a little bit to one side and you become a better doctor, but if you shift it to the hobbies and interests, well then someone's getting ahead of you for residency opportunities, or you're not putting enough effort into becoming the best doctor for your patients down the road. So I'm with you. I think it's really challenging at times because like you have these different things that bring a lot of like energy to you, and it's like difficult to kind of step away sometimes and like choose which one is better.
Yeah, and I don't know when this will be uploaded, but personally, I just decided to take like a month and a half off social media. Besides like the scheduled uploads I have on YouTube, like I'm completely off Instagram, TikTok, whatever. Just because I think this time of reflection has almost led me to comparison a lot too, and in an almost unhealthy sense. I'm starting to look back and go like, oh man, there's so many missed opportunities of like relationships that I could have built and memories I could have had with people in my class I just don't have anymore because my face was deep into pathoma
Hmm.
or first aid or step up, and those, like, I'm not gonna say regrets because oh, things happen for a reason, but I do think like missed opportunities and time that you won't get back. Like social media is just a weird reminder right now of that because you're at the end of this journey and you're looking back. So I took a step away, and I'm so grateful that I did.
Hmm.
I'm feeling a lot better now. I'm trying to recollect my creative energy because it sucks the creative energy out of you for you to see, you know, just anxiety provoking things all day long in your social media feed. And yeah, even people who have large followings and everything, yes, they also need to take a break too, and that's okay.
Absolutely. Well, I'm glad that you're able to kind of find this zen and to step away from it all for a little bit
Yeah.
and kind of tune out the noise. And kind of just building on like some final points that you were mentioning there as well. You mentioned in also another previous video that for individuals who are trying to kind of navigate this really difficult year, what is considered third year or your like third year clerkships, you mentioned that you have to really understand what is your fault and what is not your fault. So can you expand a little bit more on like what you mean by this and how it's so vital for an individual to kind of make it through the trenches of third year?
Yes, that really is. And I remember saying that, and I remember underlining it, saying like that is the most important thing that you need to keep in mind throughout third year because it is so easy in a year where your entire livelihood depends on the subjective review of somebody else about you to blame yourself for everything. Like, really. So somebody's go, yeah, you didn't show up early. It's like, What do you mean? I showed up at handoff every time. It's just like you were expected to show up at 4:30 to pre-round before you hand off. And it's just like, oh, sorry, my bad, guys. Like, I'll do better next time. And like, you go through multiple rounds of that, and even from the little things, just like certain residents have their own way of writing their notes, and you get feedback for your notes. And I know all medical schools are like, they're giving you formative feedback. A lot of these physicians are not educators at heart. They're doctors. They're physicians. They're brilliant at what they do. Doesn't mean they know how to portray that. And, I talk about this on one of my last podcasts with Dr. Paul Tran, where like there's so many soft skills that medical school doesn't teach you, one of them being communication. And a lot of these physicians don't know how to let you down easy. Just they don't. It's not their fault. They don't. But for you as a third year, where like literally there's not much separating you now from the other people, class rank is going out the window, grades are going out the window. Step one is pass fail now. What do you have to distinguish yourself? And so the weight of somebody else's words weighs so much heavier now more than ever. And when you're fighting for that and you get some formative feedback that may not be as gift wrapped as you would like, it's so easy to let that crush you. And maybe it's like the fourth year bliss that hits you when you're on your fourth year rotations, right? Either that or it's like the person on the other side of the war zone where they're just like, yeah, they do that, whatever. Like I'd be on rotations in the third year's like panicking, like, oh my god, I didn't do this, like what? They didn't say this about me. I'm like, it's not your fault. That guy, he's like that. But like you don't get that like peace in third year. You're always thinking it's your fault. And so some of it might be, take the feedback seriously, but also give yourself some grace. Like, look, not everybody can be perfect, and not everybody's going to get everything right. The residents don't get everything right, but it's going to keep you up at night and destroy your confidence as a future physician if you just internalize every single little piece of minute feedback that you get. And a lot of that can go to much bigger issues of hierarchy and, that totem pole in medical education, which like is just a rabbit hole that is way too deep for either of us to go down today. But like that has something to do with it, right? You have somebody that is in a higher position and more power than you telling you what to do. And if you don't live up to their quote unquote standards, whatever that subjective thing may be, you could feel like a failure. And it doesn't feel great. And it's funny going to away rotations too, and rotations at other campuses. You see how other hospital systems work and everything. There's some things that like I'll get completely chewed out for if I don't do at like my hospital. And then I go, like, I remember doing it away in Houston, and I was like on it, just ready to like take everything, set everything up. And my attendings and residents were like, yo, man, chill. We got people for that. You're just here to learn. And I'm like, I am. And that's what I mean. You see, like, it's so easy to take feedback, especially in third year, so critically, when at another place you're like a top 2% student. That doesn't mean you're an insignificant or like an insufficient future physician. It's just sometimes there's things that are out of your control, and ways that your evaluators think that you can't control.
Yeah, absolutely. I think like building on that too, what you kind of mentioned was like another cause of this is our entire lives have been kind of crafted around taking exams, getting a score and walking out.
Mm.
And, this is where I am in comparison to wherever you're supposed to be. And like you said, you step into this arena that is, the clerkships, the medical wards, and everything changes, everything flips. The expectations are different every single month because you're with a new team every month or you're on a new rotation. So I think like it's kind of a culture shock for a lot of people when they're making that initial transition. So I think that's great advice. Like don't internalize that. Like, take some of the feedback, but don't necessarily let the feedback destroy you. So I think
Yeah.
that's really great. And building on what you kind of introduced, interviews and like a ways and stuff. So let's talk a little bit about like how things have been going and, very superficial top level stuff, but like what was the interview like track like for you?
Well, in anesthesia, I know like a couple specialties transitioned back to in person this year. I believe orthopedic surgery, plastics, and I'm like an ENT. ENT, there it is. Those are the three that transitioned to all in person this year. Um, Anesthesia was all virtual, which has its pros and cons. And that's been discussed for the past couple of years. I fully intend on seeing it transition to like a half and half probably in the next 2 years, and then probably launch straight into back to full in person next year. And that's my theory. I'm no PD. I'm not on an admissions committee, but like
Mm-hmm.
I think everybody can agree there are things that you cannot get out of a virtual interview, and I miss it. Um, you know, a lot of these places they offer second looks, which is
Mm-hmm.
like a way to go see the campus, go see some of the residents, but they're very strict on like, hey, when we extend you this invite to this second look, when by extend, if you interviewed, you're going to get an invitation to the second look. Like we have submitted our rank list on like the program side. So
Mm-hmm.
you showing up does not matter. Like it's not going to change our order of things. And that's to mitigate, whether you're in a different socioeconomic background, you don't have the time, the means to travel. Um, that rules out some of that, like, I guess, confounding factor,
Mm-hmm.
which is great. I love that model, and at least they're introducing that. Not all programs did, but I really do appreciate the programs that offered. Of course, it was. I don't know how a lot of your interviews were. I feel like 20 minutes is like the sweet spot, but there were
Mm-hmm.
some where I was like, you have 5-10 minute interviews, and it's so hard to like get your whole story out and spiel before they're like, you got any questions? Like, you
Mm-hmm.
asked me one. It's so hard. It feels like virtual speed dating in a way. I mean, I understand it as a necessary evil, but I wish we could just talk in person. And that's me personally. I'm a people person. I like talking with people.
Mm-hmm.
And there's body language, there's mannerisms that I can't communicate over video. Mannerisms that like I want to show them because like it makes me a good resident, a good future physician. You know, I I found it pretty tiresome to just sit on my computer. Um, I had a really
Mm-hmm.
cool background up. I think I made a short on it. A lot of that was like fun for me because I got to have like this crazy studio set up in my room, and everybody would log in and be like, "What cinema camera or is your webcam?" I'm like, "It's not a cinema camera, But that helps me kind of dive into my background in like videography and creative art, something that was obviously a big part of my interview process as well as my CV. But I'm I'm glad it's over. I met a lot of awesome people along the way, but I'm glad it's over. I don't know
Exactly.
how it
Like,
was for you, Nathan.
yeah, Andy, I think you're right in the sense that I wish it was in person because you lose a lot of that, like, personal communication stuff. Despite us being very comfortable on the screen, I think that like you're saying, we lose some of that close, like intimate interaction there. And you really don't get a good sense of the program per se if you only talk to them
Mhm.
and, two or three people over a 10-minute period of time. And so it's really hard to kind of put your best self forward when you feel like you are kind of rushed to kind of cover some major features. And so, yeah, I think, I'm happy that interviews are done. It was super exciting at the same time, but being on the other end of it, it's definitely a good feeling. And I know we're getting towards the end of our interview right now, so I just want to briefly talk a little bit about, why you formed NDMD Productions and talk a little bit more about like the YouTube channel itself. Now, you've certainly built up like an impressive brand and community trust over the years. And I think so many people in your audience gravitate towards you because you are so like down to earth. They don't see some flashy YouTuber or med school admissions guru. They see like the real you, and you're not afraid to share the highs and the lows that come in with this process. So, how did you personally stay grounded when your channel was blowing up and when people kind of hang on to every word that you said?
Mom didn't raise me to be flashy and go crazy with that. I mean, I can talk for hours and hours and try to explain that, but at the end of the day, that's the truth. Every little interaction, I'm just grateful for. Whether it's somebody coming up to me saying like, "Oh my God, I watched your videos on an interview," or or something, to like medical students at my school saying like, "I discovered this school because of your videos." It's so humbling for that because you can't earn that. You kind of just get lucky, and all you can do is make use of that platform in a responsible manner, and then just be grateful, really. So I think the establishing of NDMD Productions was a realization that like, hey, I want this to be um, a more formal part of my life and my career. It's something that gave some, you know, at least legal as well as CV legitimacy to what I was doing because a lot of people, I knew coming into this that a lot of people in the formal academic medicine realm don't know what this is all about. They see it as like in some eyes the devil. Like, oh my God, social media. What are you doing? Like when I was when we were making the COVID music video tribute that ended up winning like a national award across like all the med school music videos. I remember Brit, like me and my team brought it up to our administration. He said music video. They're like, look, we don't want our school logo or grounds attached to, half naked girls dancing on cars. And we were like, whoa, 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 what? Like that is no, that's not at all what we were planning on doing. But they hear music video, right? And that's what that's their gut reaction, and that's the same way a lot of people react to social media. Um, I again got lucky being YouTube is kind of the main squeeze, and YouTube, as far as when you compare it to Instagram and especially TikTok, is a more respectable name. And so like just establishing the company allows me to at least bring people in who are better than me at certain aspects, as well as, yeah, just organize some legitimacy to what I'm doing. Not that like it needed it, but for the industry that I know that I will be working in, it is a level of protection and a formality that I believe is very important. But at the end of
Fascinating.
the day, the stories are what matter. I'm grateful that people, I can see, I guess, the authenticity, the humility that comes through. I mentioned this before. There are things that you can't portray on a screen. There's things that the internet skews, one of which is context. So I will say things in the utmost caring manner, but somebody out there is going to take it out of context. Somebody out there is not going to be happy with it. And your job is not to convince them otherwise. You know what your intention was. And if there's one person out there that is benefiting from it, inspired from it, or is learning something from that video, then it's still worth doing. And again, where this is going to go once we hit residency and match goes, we'll have to see. Stay tuned to the channel and the socials once I get back on, because it'll be just as much of a surprise to you as it is to me.
Love it. And so now we're getting towards the end of our interview today, and it's time for our famous 3 questions. And these are the same 3 questions that we ask every single person who comes on the show. And some of these might overlap with some content that you've already said before, so we can just keep it nice and brief if you'd like. So, how do you maintain a work-life balance in your demanding profession? And do you have any tips or recommendations for individuals who are striving to achieve this same balance?
I would say set a few non-negotiable goals every single day that are good for you. Say that, like, don't set like I'm going to have 3 beers every single day as your non-negotiable goal. That's not good for you. But like for me, it's like a protein shake and oatmeal in the morning. It's so minute, but in the midst of the craziness, like knowing that you have at least just a hint of control over your life and you did something that's good for you in a little bit, like that helps keep perspective and balance. And of course, keep the creative things in your life, especially if we're going to talk about the context of medicine. Because at the end of the day, it's a very human field. Textbooks will not teach you how to connect with people. It's your outside experiences that do. It's you connecting with your patient in that 10-minute pre-op or less pre-op about music, about art, about the time that you traveled, went somewhere, the food that you had that adhered to their culture. You find any of that amongst your pharmacology and anatomy lectures? I don't think so. And so, making sure to prioritize those parts of your life and not think of it as it's distracting you from your medical career, but in fact enhancing it, is the mindset that you need to seek that balance.
Of course. And our second question, do you have any last-minute recommendations to students or graduates who are interested in pursuing a career similar to your own?
Actually, you know what? My advice has changed over the years. It used to be, ask yourself, is this the only thing that I could see myself doing ever? And if the answer is yes, then do it. I think I would have said that 2.5, maybe 3 years ago. Not anymore, because I do think that is leading you down a very unhealthy relationship with medicine. What I will say is, please get yourself in the shoes as close as you can to people who live the life that we want to do, and find the place that you're not looking at the clock when you're working or shadowing. If you find yourself still engaged after a full day and going, oh, I have to go home now, instead of it's 15 minutes till I have to go, 10 minutes till I have to go, 5 minutes till I have to go, that's when you know you're making a well-informed decision.
Perfect. I think that's great advice as well. And our last question of the night, and this one's a big one, but what are your personal, professional, or business-oriented goals that you'd like to accomplish in the next 5 to 10 years?
I think professionally, of course, I would love to, one, have a job, complete residency. Of course, my heart is pointed towards pediatric anesthesia, so fellowship and everything. We'd love to be working at a children's hospital, but that path can alter. I'm not going to lock myself in there, but of course, working primarily with kids in pediatric ORs just makes my heart light up, and that's what I would love to be doing in the next 5 to 10 years. Professionally, I guess creatively, but also /professionally, I've been making videos for the past 4 years now. It's kind of at a crossroads at the moment. I honestly would love to be making videos in some capacity still, both on my channel, but also like, still working with other creators and other people, either in a mentorship role or um, even like a creative advisory role. Would it be awesome to be involved in like something like a medical TV show as far as like a consultant role or something? Yes, that'd be so cool. I don't know if they trust me doing that, but I would love to be trusted doing that because uh, it's just something where I can merge those two in a more formal manner. But even if that doesn't happen, um, at least throughout residency, I'd love for people to still be collecting lessons along the way that I pick up because I don't intend on there being any less lessons in residency. And of course, personally, like say I'm leaving, Georgia, hopefully, branching out, maybe on my own for a little bit. I'd love to have, a lot can change in 5, 10 years. Let have, a wife and kids, settle down somewhere. Because that's just something that's a priority to me. It's something that, I realize medical school and medicine can take away from you that you shouldn't. At least to me, it's not worth that part of your life taking away that that joy of relationship. So that's something that is a goal for me in the next 5 to 10 years. And I know that's very like flowers, close the curtains, happy ending, but that's what I want. So I'm gonna say it.
Fantastic. And for any of our listeners who are interested in pediatric anesthesia, you can check out episode 33, where I interview Dr. Max Feinstein as well. So great episode. He's great contact. Yeah. And I know Andy also
I
did a
love Max.
podcast episode with him too. So
I
he's
love
an
Max. I met
inspiration
up
to
with
us
him
all.
In New York, so he's a great guy. Please go watch his stuff. I watch his stuff even for like OR prep. So
Mm-hmm.
it's great. But Nathan, thank you for having me, man.
All righty. So we've come to the end of our interview today, and I'd like to thank all of our listeners for the support. If you have any additional questions about the medical school journey or reflecting on everything you need to know about getting into medical school, check out my website at www.physicianpharmacist.com. Before we let you go, Andy, how can our listeners get in touch with you and learn more about you?
So all my stuff is kind of cornerstoned at ndmdproductions.com. That's kind of the hub for everything. Over the next couple months, I'll probably be in some renovation as I change pictures from med school stuff to probably residency stuff. But all my interviews and content, podcasts, whatever, can be found there. To get to my YouTube channel where I upload videos, it is literally the letters ND space MD. And unfortunately, my other socials are all different handles. TikTok at the real NDMD. If you want to follow over there, that is basically my junk drawer of content. So if you want to see that stuff, go over there. But I'm probably most active on Instagram at Andy_win9. And yeah, you can tell I didn't expect any of this to pop off because all my social handles are different.
No problem. And all of that will be linked in the description below for this video. So again, Andy, thank you so much for taking the time to be here today. I really do appreciate it. I think you have such great insight into this process, and it was a blast having you.
Thank you, and best of luck, both
Yeah,
of us,
fingers
match
crossed.
day.
All right, take care.